Hello, and welcome to the podcast. My name is Hannah.
I'm Donovan.
And this is My Thing, Your Thing.
Yay!
This is one of my things.
Yes, it is.
And we are back to the world of Discworld and the City Watch, the novels written by Terry Pratchett.
You want to take that again?
Yeah. This is one of my things. We are back to Discworld with the City Watch, the series written by Terry Pratchett, which is one of my favorite book series ever written. We're actually approaching one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah. So far, this has been one of my favorite, fantasy series I've ever read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're only reading the City Watch. I do think that you would really love Small Gods, Monstrous Regiment, and eventually the Moist von Lipwig, but Moist von Lipwig stuff happens well after City Watch stuff.
Yeah. I'm sure...
Not well after, kind of intertwined towards the end, but you know.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get to it.
Yeah. This one is Feet of Clay.
Yeah.
Which is the 19th of all of the Discworld books written. He had written 19 books previously.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and there were 4 in between the last one, Men-at-Arms, and this one. And if you're a fan of Discworld and you want to know, it's Soul Music, Interesting Times, and Masquerade, which were in between. And actually, right before Men-at-Arms was the first Discworld novel that I ever read, which was Lords and Ladies.
Okay.
Which is set in the mountains. It's one of the witches' books. And I remember being bored at my uncle's house one Easter, and he was a huge Discworld fan. And I just picked it up and started reading it, and I read the entire thing, most of it in one weekend, and he let me borrow it.
Yeah.
And that's still the copy that I have. I never gave it back to him. He also let me borrow this copy, my copy of Feet of Clay, which I have now unfortunately ripped both the front and back covers off.
I was about to say, that is a raggedy ass copy over there.
Yeah, unfortunately. My little sister knows some stuff about bookbinding, and she's going to get me, there's apparently special sticker tape that you can get, bookbinding tape, to put it back together. We are back in Ankh-Morpork with the City Watch. Now expanded City Watch. They have more houses, more officers, more dwarves, more trolls.
Yeah.
Just more. More pork, in fact.
More. Oh, I got that.
Yeah, thank you.
Because there's a butcher shop.
Yes, that's why. Yeah, butchering plays a large part in this book. Mm-hmm. The butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker, in fact.
Oh, yes.
This one feels a little bit more like a classic noir detective novel. That's sort of what he was going for, specifically with Guards. There's the whole beginning part where, it's the city is in the rain, and there's the kind of the neon sign, and Vimes is a drunk, and all that sort of stuff. But this feels a little bit more detective-y.
Yeah, it's essentially an attempted murder mystery.
Yes, an actual murder mystery and an attempted murder mystery, and then also some other people die too.
Yeah, fair enough.
This is when Discworld starts to feel lived in. We've done a lot of the establishing work, how societies exist.
There's been 19 books?
Yes.
Jesus.
But we're not establishing so much, we're expanding within, and sort of the books are getting more of a lived-in feel as characters are established and they're now allowed to just kind of go play.
Yeah.
First thoughts, what do you think?
Well, I will just say that of the 3 that we've read so far, I think it's my favorite.
Yeah.
I like all 3 of them a lot, but I think this one was the most... I think I said after the first one, I was like, this is really good, the plot's really fun, I can't wait to see where they go with it. And then I think after the second one, I was like, I like the expanded characters, and I like the world, but I thought that the plot was a little meandering, and it kind of took some time to kind of fully come together.
Yeah.
This one was, from the word go, already kind of, tight and well done.
Yeah.
But it still has the expansive... characters and all that kind of stuff going on. Lots of just fun little characters just kind of popping in with a few lines here and there that are all really interesting. And then on top of all of that, it has the classic Terry Pratchett, humanism in there.
Yes.
Which I think was on even more full display this time around than it had been before.
Yes, a lot of the stuff in this book is what does it mean to be alive? Not necessarily what does it mean to be human, because there are other species that we're dealing with, but what does it mean to be alive?
What does it mean to be a person?
What does it mean to be a person? Yeah.
And not a thing.
And not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-spoilers here.
Yeah.
The sort of general overarching plot of this is that at the very beginning of the book, there is a murder.
Yeah.
And as they're investigating that murder, it turns out someone is trying to kill the Partition. Someone is trying to poison him. And so first murder kind of takes a little bit of a backseat as they're trying to figure out what is going on over here. There's also stuff going on with the golems in the city.
Yes.
And someone is trying to essentially frame Vimes, more or less.
Yeah, that kind of comes a little bit later.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he's sort of, a lot of the clues kind of point in his direction.
Yes. There are people who are trying to make moves to remove people in power and then put other people in power.
Yes. I will just say right now, if you're interested in reading this book and you're somebody who, spoilers matter a lot for you, don't look up the plot synopsis beforehand, because you know how sometimes you can read a plot synopsis and it sort of doesn't, like, reveal. Literally, on Wikipedia and on the Discworld wiki, the first sentence of the plot synopsis gives away a lot of the book.
Yeah.
That you don't learn about until the last, 10% of the book. And I had that spoiled for me. I am not somebody who cares that much about spoilers personally, but some people really do, and I know that would kind of ruin their enjoyment of it. So I'm just going to say that right out front.
Yes.
Poor form, wiki, poor form, whoever did that. Yeah.
This is a very tightly written book. Mm-hmm. The first 5 scenes essentially set up everything that's going to happen later.
Yeah. And lots of, things happening that you think you understand what's going on in the scene, and then later on it turns out that you actually don't understand all of the things that are happening in the scene. This happens frequently throughout this book. It's one of the things that I think is really good about it.
Yes.
Is that it shows you things and doesn't hide things from you. It just shows you them, and then later on when you understand the full context, it sort of makes those earlier scenes more interesting and
Absolutely,
deeper.
yes.
And that's a pretty difficult trick to pull off consistently, and I think Terry Pratchett does it multiple times throughout the book.
Yes, and it is a thing that he gets better at as he goes. That is something that happens more often in the especially in the Night Watch books.
Yeah.
There is also a fun thing that he likes to do where he will give his characters a vocal tick of some sort.
Yeah.
He did it with one of the characters in this. He did it with Edward Deeth in the last, or Deeth in the last book. And it's one of those ways you can sort of track who's talking to whom and pick up on the context clues without necessarily him spelling out what's happening.
Yeah.
And then you get to feel a little bit clever.
Yeah. There's lots of times throughout the book where characters are talking and you don't know exactly who they are. This happens in the first book as well.
Yes.
In fact, one of the big plots of the first book is that the cabal of people who are trying to summon the dragon, they all have a specific way of speaking and a specific, and you meet a lot of the characters throughout the story, and that was something he did pretty early on. This one also, there's a lot about smells, because Angua is a werewolf.
Yes.
And she smells really well. And so, there's lots of I know there's a golem or a vampire or whatever around here because of the smell.
Yeah.
It's another one of those things where, when you look back through the story, you go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. She said this at this point, and then when we went back later on, we're like, yep, that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. Okay. I wouldn't say that Terry Pratchett, all of these Night's Watch books are mysteries, but this one definitely feels more like a mystery.
Yes.
Yeah. Not exactly like a potboiler, potboilers, everyone's stuck in a room and things
No.
This is more of I think, as you said, a noir where you're sort of walking around and picking up clues and talking to people, and, there's twists and turns and things like that, which I think is a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's very fun. And if you love these characters like I do, you just enjoy watching them do stuff. It's really great. In the first book, Nobbs and Colin are very, very funny.
Yes.
And by this book, I still enjoy them, but they're almost my least favorite of all the characters. There's so many other new fun characters that we get to certain scenes with them and I'm like, okay, but what are they doing? What's going on?
Speaking of some of the new fun characters, let's give a quick rundown. So all of our old favorites are here: Captain Carrot, Commander Vimes, Angua, I believe, is she a corporal? Is she a sergeant?
No, she's a constable still.
She's a constable still. Okay.
Yep.
Constable Angua, Fred Colin, Nobby Nobbs. Detritus is there.
Detritus is a sergeant.
Detritus is a sergeant. He is sergeant shaped and sergeant brained.
Yeah.
And no one's going, like, Fred Colin is a sergeant, has been a sergeant through and through his whole life, but no one's ever going to sergeant any harder than Sergeant Detritus is.
Yeah. Detritus is a very fun character.
Yes. But we also have a couple of new characters. The sort of more main character is we now get Cheery Littlebottom, who is a dwarf.
Yes, who is a dwarf. We will not go too much into Cheery's backstory because it is a little bit of a spoiler. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Cheery is a very fun character, very competent and interesting character who also, like, has a story that is very progressive for 2026.
Yeah.
Like, again, without getting too much into it, I was impressed by how well Terry Pratchett tackled this topic 30 years before today, literally
30. Yeah, this was written in 1996.
Yeah. So, very impressive, and just also, like, an interesting character with, flaws and, hopes and dreams. And this book passes the Bechdel test,
Oh, so much, yes.
Yeah.
It is also really interesting Cheery is not really a traditional dwarf. When Cheery joins the Watch, he does so in a capacity as an alchemist, not as an officer.
Yeah.
Because Cheery got, expelled from the Alchemy Guild via explosion, as all alchemists do.
Yes.
But Vimes needs someone who can mix stuff up in bottles and say, here's what's here. Like, this is what this is.
And also can, take a sample and tell me what that is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this book revolves around poisoning. That's an important part. So we need to know, arsenic. Oh, is it arsenic? We need to test,
Also, a sort of more secondary character, but we do get Visit the Infidel with explanatory pamphlets.
Oh, Constable Visit. I love Constable Visit.
He's really good, yeah.
He's a very funny character.
He shows up a lot, sort of in, a background. It's very much if Pratchett needs, a named person to, run an errand or, show up with important information, it's usually Constable Visit.
Yeah, because, I don't know if you could get a whole book with him as a main character without fully expanding his character.
Yeah.
But from what we have of him, he's very funny.
Visit is Omanian, and if there's a whole history, a whole book about the Omanian religion, read Small Gods, it's very good. But basically, Om is a god that previously the church was very deep into inquisitorial stuff. There's a lot of torture and death going on, and then they had a bit of a... What's the word for revolution, but when the church does it?
Like a reformation.
There you go. Yeah, they had a huge reformation, and people stopped torturing each other with, knives and swords and hot irons and pokers and such, and started doing it with lectures and pamphlets.
Yeah.
And so now all of the Omanians have names like Visit the Infidel with explanatory pamphlets.
Yes.
And Visit is very interested in trying to get people to convert in the sort of... Okay, so in America, oftentimes when people trying to evangelize at you, it's a lot more condescending than Visit is. Visit very much thinks that you're wrong for not believing in Om, but he's also he's not going to be a dick about it, essentially. He's a little bit of a dick.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's less pushy than what I have experienced with people who are evangelizing to me.
I can't speak for Terry Pratchett, but it seems like Terry Pratchett is sort of making a funny sort of inference to the idea that, back 1,000 years ago, if you didn't believe in someone's God, you would be tortured to death about it. And nowadays, you just have to deal with someone who's really annoying.
Yeah.
And that's certainly better, but there are times when you're just like, oh my God, leave me alone.
It is nice though that Visit kind of keeps his commentary to sort of very briefly saying, of course they were backwards practices and this doesn't really mean anything, but then he is actually a good copper. He is good at his job.
He's also very knowledgeable about other people's religion.
Yes
Probably because he wants to disprove them.
Yes,
but he says that kind of stuff. He's like, well, in their belief, their backwards wrong belief, but their belief. It's stuff like that. Very fun. And we also meet Dorfel, who we will not talk about yet.
Not yet. Oh, yeah. Dorfel, my beloved.
But Dorfel is a very fun and interesting character as well.
Yes.
Oh, and we met the dragon.
Oh, yeah, Dragon King of Arms.
King of Arms.
Who, is not a really recurring character. He's only in it for this book. But at one point, this is after Sam and Sybil have been married.
Yeah.
And Sam has also been given the title of a knight by the partition.
Yep, he is Sir Samuel Vimes.
Sir Samuel Vimes. A big theme of this book and all Sir Samuel Vimes books is Sam chafing against the, him being a lord, essentially.
Yeah.
He loves Sybil. He hates that marrying Sybil means that he now has to hobnob around with a bunch of knobs.
Yes.
And, yeah. And in this book, we also get a little bit more of, Vimes's history.
Yeah.
We learn that he grew up in Cockbill Street, which is a very poor area of Ankh-Morpork. Not quite the Shades, but, bordering on the Shades.
What he says about this area, which I think is very interesting, because I have known people who are from places like this. Mm-hmm. It is a poor area, but it is not a poor area that accepts being poor.
Yeah.
They do not accept the sort of, trappings or the... the label of being poor. So there's sort of this poverty that sort of masquerades as middle class, which is something you see in America a lot.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing of well, we get by.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, there will be no food on the table, but there will be soap and you will be clean.
Yeah.
Which is no one looks at us and says we're poor.
Yep.
No one thinks that we're poor. And that's it's very interesting.
Yeah, and at one point, Sam goes back to Cockbill Street and is very much... It is absolutely a blast from the past for him, and it is, I think, a little bit grounding.
Yeah.
Because he's spent so much time now in the big fancy house and, 3 meals a day and good boots on his feet.
Yep.
And there's, at the very beginning, with this theme of Vimes chafing against his place in life, at the very beginning, he is remembering a story of having come back from some sort of well-to-do thing, seeing a light on in the kitchen and realizing that the butler, the cook, and the gopher boy are all drinking beer and playing cards. And he goes in and is like, all right, lads, deal me in. And it breaks, cracks jokes with them. But the atmosphere has changed.
Yeah.
Because now
he's their boss.
Yeah, their boss is there.
Yeah.
And so they don't feel comfortable doing the same thing. And so he realizes this isn't a place for him anymore. He's no longer just a regular copper who can hang out with the butler in the kitchen and eat pig knuckle sandwiches and drink beer with them.
Yeah.
He's the master of the house, and he can't be here because they're not going to relax around him.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations about class in this book, in all of the books, but in this one in particular.
In particular, yeah.
Yeah. So we are going to go away from the non-spoiler territory here. Obviously, do read all of the Night's Watch books. Read all of the Terry Pratchett Discworld books if you can. There's 400,000 of them. But they're all pretty good from what I've read so far.
And not to blow up anybody's spot, but you can find the audiobooks on YouTube.
Get
them from the library if you can.
Yes.
Absolutely, I would super recommend that. But
I listened to this. Again, we have talked about this app before. We're not sponsored or anything like that, but Libby is a free app where if you are a member of your local library, you can log in basically as a member of that local library, and you can get digital books on your Kindle or whatever. You can also get audiobooks. I got Feet of Clay on here. I didn't have to wait, to borrow it or anything like that. And it was great. I personally like to listen to audiobooks at a slightly higher speed, and they have speed settings, so I listen at 1.2 times speed, so it's still intelligible, but it goes a little faster.
Yeah.
So there's less pauses and things like that. And it was great. And this particular one, the Penguin Random House version or whatever, the voice actor is John Colshaw, who is excellent. And then Bill Nighy also does some voices and does some of the little what would you call them, Hannah? They're sort of
asides.
Asides.
Footnotes in the book, but asides in the audiobook.
And then also in this one, Peter Serafinowicz, I don't know how to pronounce that name. He does the voice of the golems.
Oh, fun.
Yes, so they actually had a couple of different voices, and the differentiation between the voices makes it pretty easy to follow, even though there's no chapter arrangement or anything like that.
Yes.
It's not too bad. I found it fairly easy to follow. If you are somebody who does audiobooks, I highly recommend.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a Sunday, such a Sunday, such a Sunday away.
So, on to a little bit more of the plot.
And spoiler territory.
So we're not going to do like a full like rundown of every beat-by-beat situation.
No.
But essentially, the overview of the plot is that there's a priest.
Old Father Tubelcheck.
Yeah, Old Father Tubelcheck. And a baker. What's his name?
Oh, gosh, I don't remember. It's like Mr. Smith or something like that.
It's Mr. It starts with an H. I remember it starts with an H. His name is Mr. Hopkinson. He is a human, but he is a baker of dwarf battle bread.
Yes, he is an expert in dwarf battle bread, and he has a little dwarf battle bread museum.
Which, of course, Carrot loves to go to.
Yes.
And even volunteers at.
Yeah, and there's a really funny bit right at the beginning where he and Angua are walking along, and he's like, "Oh, I've got a fun surprise for you," and she's like, "I wonder if it's going to be quite as surprising as the mineral museum that you took me to last time." And she's saying like a bit ironically, but Carrot has no trace of iron in his body at all, despite the fact that he was raised by dwarves, and it goes straight over his head, and he's like, "Yes, that was quite good, wasn't it?"
Yeah. So Mr. Tubelcheck, the priest, and then Mr. Hopkinson, the bread baker, are both dead.
Yeah.
And it seems as though a golem has killed Mr. Hopkinson because he's got, clay there? And
yes. The Tubelcheck has both clay and what appears to be wax underneath his nails.
Yes.
And so does Mr. Hopkinson. He's got at least clay under his nails. And when Angua is there, she smells something she smells nothing, which is very confusing to her because as a werewolf, she can smell everything and everybody smells of something.
Yeah.
But she can't smell anything at Hopkinson's place.
Yeah. She does eventually kind of smell like it's like wet dirt.
Yes.
Kind of, yeah. But it's a very, like, peculiar kind of smell.
Different than the loam that Ankh-Morpork is built on.
Exactly. And so, while this is happening, Vetinari, the patrician, he falls ill. And it very quickly is figured out that he's being poisoned. However, no one can figure out how he's being poisoned.
Right.
You know, they're like, oh, we're tasting his food. We've changed his bed linens. You know, all this kind of stuff. And then for some reason, he starts to feel better over the course of the day, and then in the morning, he starts to, he feels way worse.
Yes.
So they're like, oh, it must be something he's doing. Maybe it's his books or what, and they can't figure it out. So that's sort of the setup.
Also of note with this is that the Guild of Assassins have come out and said no one has a contract on him, and our fee for him is 1 million Ankh-Morpork dollars, which almost no one has the sort of funds to pull off, except for Sam Vimes.
Yes. Which is also funny because Sam Vimes is frequently a target of assassinations himself.
Yes. In fact, in one of the opening scenes, Sam Vimes is shaving himself because he will not have anyone else have a blade near his face. Absolutely not. And he avoids an assassination attempt right there. He's got all sorts of stuff. His house is covered in traps, essentially assassin traps. In his shaving mirror is slightly convex so that he can see more of the world around him.
Yeah.
So this assassin has shot a bolt at him, broken his mirror, and then skipped off across the roof. And Sam is thinking to himself of all of the ways that he has sort of planted traps for assassins who are coming after him. He's like, loosened up some of the tiles on the roof, and like there's a bear trap underneath like the hedge.
Yeah.
And there's a hole in the roof of the dragon pen, which this assassin has fallen into and is now dangling above a bunch of very excitable baby dragons.
Yep.
There is also, this is later, but I want to say this before I forget it. There's a bit where Dr. Downey, the head of the Assassin's Guild, comes into Sam's office trying to get evidence that Sam is behind what's happening to the partition. And Sam Vimes kind of beats the crap out of him. And as he's leaving again, he's like, hey, what do we have your fee set at? And Sam Vimes is like, $20,000. He's like, I think we have to raise that.
Yeah. Very funny.
It's really good.
So what it appears is that someone is murdering these people who seem totally unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem like they're not important people or anything like that. But also they're trying to kill the patrician because it all seems like it's connected in some way. At the same time, Vimes goes to the
heraldry
people to get his heraldry because he's a knight now.
His coat of arms.
Yep. And Dragon, King of Arms, basically tells him, we can't give you one because your ancestor killed the last king.
Old Stoneface Vimes killed the last king of Ankh-Morpork. And he did it because the last king was an absolute horror show. They don't say explicitly what he was like and what he did, but there's a lot of allusions. And in fact, I think there's a line somewhere that says, even down in the dungeon, he had these machines, and then like the line cuts off there.
Yeah, he keeps saying like, oh yeah, and then they looked in that place and, what did they find down there? And then they kind of changed the subject awkwardly,
But importantly, no judge in the city would rule against a king because he's a king. And so old Stoneface took an axe himself, cursed a lot of him, and cut his head off. And because he's a regicide, that means that the Vimes coat of arms was stricken from the record, and Sam's Vime can't have a coat of arms.
Nope, can't have a coat of arms. That sucks. Although he doesn't really care. He's fine, whatever.
It's kind of funny because, so Lady Sybil had, made this appointment for him. And he was like, as he's being told this, he's like, well, I didn't want the damn thing this morning, but now that you're saying that I can't have one, I'm kind of upset about it.
Yeah, exactly. And at this meeting, he is told that someone is a descendant of the last Earl of Ankh and would be the heir to the new Earl of Ankh. And that person is Corporal Nobby Nobbs.
Yeah, Nobby Nobbs, who regularly has to carry a shit with him to prove that he is in fact a human and alive.
Yes. Which we hear, we actually get the text of.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Which is from Veterinary. It's just like, best I can tell, he's definitely probably a human. Which is also very funny.
Yeah.
And so Vimes is like, what? Huh? He's like really lost. So he's like, all right, guess I got to go tell him. And he does. And Nobbs, of course, hates this. He's just like, I don't get any money.
Yeah, there's no money to the family. It's just the name. There's no money, there's no house, there's no land, there's nothing. It is just the name, the Earl of Ankh.
Yeah. He keeps trying to figure out ways to make it work for him, but all of them require some responsibility, and that's just not
what he's gonna do. No,
Nobbs' way. No. So while all of this is happening, Carrot and Angua are having their relationship. Angua keeps thinking like, eventually I have to leave Carrot because I'm a werewolf and this just isn't going to work out.
Yeah. So she has this whole internal struggle the entire time of like, it's more explicitly spelled out in other books, but the something that is halfway between a wolf and halfway between a human is basically just a dog. And she is continuing to chafe against this idea that she does love Carrot and Carrot does love her, and she knows that being a werewolf doesn't bother Carrot, but it bothers Carrot that it bothers other people.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't want to leave, but she feels like she's going to have to at some point. And part of that, I think, is that because she cares so much about Carrot, she doesn't want him to feel that awkwardness anymore.
Yeah, but also another interesting thing is that she is consistently frustrated with Carrot because Carrot is so selfless and fair that she's like upset that he just basically never gets like selfish and he never gets jealous or anything like that. And she's a little like kind of mad about that, where she's like, I kind of wish you would be a little unfair sometimes. You would be like, there would be a bit of a selfish bone in your body.
Yeah, she yells at him for being too reasonable at one point.
Basically, yes.
So in our relationship, Donovan oftentimes compliments me on my being extremely reasonable, and that is a thing that I aim for. And I put a lot of credit of that to Terry Pratchett and Carrot in particular.
Absolutely. No, it's one of my favorite things about you, and it's something that I strive to be as well, is just to like be a very like, hey, like emotions are fine and good and you should feel them, but also like, don't make it other people's problem.
Yeah.
You know, like, treat them like they're just as important as you are.
Yes.
That's really all that you have to do.
Yeah.
And Carrot cares about everyone.
He does.
That's his whole thing, is that he cares about everyone, which is why he would be a great king. But kings are bad inherently, and so there's this weird tension there too.
Well, it's also, there's the thing where, like, yeah, you can have a good king, but, like, is the advisor good? Are the council members good? Mm-hmm. Is the tax collector good? Like, even having a king and saying this guy has absolute power doesn't really work, because there are so many other people who also have to be good. If you're basing the system on if everyone would just, it's not going to work, because there are people who are not going to just.
Yeah, Vimes pontificates a lot about the the nature of power and government, and he talks about how patricians them are usually also real assholes, but patricians aren't a different level of human.
Yeah.
They're not better than everybody else because they're a patrician. They just have that job.
Yeah.
You know, whereas kings are like separate. They're special because they're kings.
And the city has also, so the city had several really bad kings, but the city has also had several really bad partitions in similar ways.
Yeah.
But Vetinari is not that. He makes the city work. And he is a tyrant, which he will absolutely remind you of. He has absolute power. He can throw you in the dungeon if he wants to for pissing him off. He's just not really going to, because it's more valuable to him to have you working as opposed to having you in the dungeon.
Yeah, he's very Machiavellian.
Yeah.
He's very much like, I would prefer to just kind of have things go on just as they always have, but he still has, scorpions and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, he's still evil, but he's like lawful evil,
So that also becomes part of the thing of, like, if Vetinari dies, who's going to take over after him? Because none of the guilds will want another guild member in charge, because they're all going to be fighting each other for power anyway.
Yeah.
And so who do you put on the, well, not throne, because nobody sits on the throne because they don't have a king, but who do you put in charge of Ankh-Morpork if Vetinari dies?
Yeah, and part of the whole thing we mentioned earlier, where all the evidence is pointing towards Vimes, is because Vimes has said before, kind of joking, where he's just like, look, if someone's going to kill Vetinari, it's going to be me.
It's going to be me.
Even though
his family has a history of killing people in power.
Exactly, and we know that Vimes is like doing his absolute best, because we're in his head a little bit. We know that he's doing his absolute best to make sure that whoever is poisoning Vetinari is caught. He does not want Vetinari to die, but he is kind of suspect number one.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, there is a cabal of people in the city who are, at least making plans for what would happen if Vetinari dies.
Mm-hmm.
And they are suspicious of Vimes. They are dealing with him.
Yep.
There's a couple of people who sort of, make that, like, we have it taken care of, like, what the hell does that mean? And on top of that, they're trying to figure out who can they put in charge as king. So they're trying to figure out, well, who can be just like a figurehead who doesn't actually do any work, but can kind of like just sit there and do what he's told. And a certain newly found Earl of Ankh becomes the perfect fall guy for this new scheme.
Yes, because they don't, like, Lord Rust, Lady Celelchi, like, they don't want to put themselves in power, because they know that everybody's going to be coming for their neck. But if they can put someone in power that each of them can sort of whisper into the ears of, then, like, maybe some sort of stability could be achieved. Or someone they can like put on the carriage and have them wave as they all walk around, and then let other people get down to the business of actually governing the city, which is sort of the plan.
And also they're like, well, we don't have to worry about the succession with him, because nobody's gonna have a kid with knobs.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem.
Which also kind of means that they're kicking the can down a little way, because Knobs is not going to live forever either.
Well,
so, like,
these people aren't smart.
No, this is true.
Let's be real. They're not smart. They're not subtle. They're just self-interested.
Interestingly, though, so heavy spoilers at this point.
Yeah, we're in spoiler territory.
Yeah, we're deep in spoiler territory. So even though there is sort of like this coalition of people of like upper crusty types who are trying to put Knobs on the throne or in power so that they can control him, the person actually pulling the strings is Dragon King of Arms from the shadows.
Yes.
And he has hand selected Nobby Knobs because he doesn't want to put Carrot in power as the king because he thinks that people won't accept a werewolf as a queen or puppies as the next successors.
Yeah.
So he is planning for Knobs to have children and keep ruling. Mm-hmm. He just thinks that, like, it shouldn't be a half werewolf.
Yeah. And there is maybe a certain amount, it's not explicitly stated, but there's a little bit of an implication that he's a vampire because Dragon King of Arms is a vampire.
Yeah.
That he has a little bit of a prejudice against werewolves.
Yeah.
Like, just a little bit of, like, werewolves aren't as good as
There's definitely
vampires.
in this book enmity between werewolves and vampires. Angua hates vampires a lot. She does not, like, she can smell when vampires are around. She could smell if a vampire was in a room last week.
Yeah. Vimes can also does not like vampires.
Oh, no, he hates vampires.
He doesn't like any undead, but, like, by the end of the book, he's like, yeah, swear in the 2 zombies, that's fine, but no fucking vampires.
No fucking vampires.
Yeah, which is
there
very
will be
fun.
no vampires in my watch.
Yeah, but the 2 new main characters in this book that are basically gonna be members of the Watch going forward, we've got Cheery Littlebottom, or Cherie Littlebottom.
Yep.
Because it turns out that Cheery Littlebottom is actually a woman.
Yeah.
Dwarves have this interesting thing in their culture, according to Terry Pratchett, where it's fine to be a woman, you just can't talk about it. Like,
yes.
There's
no such thing as a female pronoun in Dwarvish.
Yeah, so you're just supposed to sort of, like, pretend you're a man.
Yeah.
You know, which is very funny because there are points in, Carrot's like, well, we have to protect the female dwarves, and it's just like, but you don't know which ones are and which ones aren't.
Yeah, he and Angua have a conversation where he's like, but she's a girl, we have to protect her. And Angua's like, you don't think of that about any of the other female dwarves. And he's like, what do you mean? And she, like, names a couple, and he's like, but he, like, put down a riot last week all by himself. And she's like, yes, she did.
Yeah. And dwarves kind of, like, talk a bunch about how, like, you're not really supposed to know who's a woman and who's not until it gets to the point where you're, like, having kids.
Yeah, until you're courting and you have to have the polite but awkward conversation about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And there are, in dwarven histories, there are some famous dwarven couples who are together for a very long time and do not ever produce children. So,
yes.
No one asks questions, no one says anything about it, but,
So, Cherries or Cheries, the way to pronounce it is up to interpretation.
Sure. At one point, she thinks about renaming herself Lucinda.
Yeah. But her journey is basically, she's like, look, I don't care about normal dwarf things. I don't care about songs about gold. I don't care about that shit, which is funny. She's an alchemist who doesn't care about gold.
Yeah.
That's very funny, just on its own. So she's like, I like clothes and hanging out and, all the stuff that dwarves are not supposed to like.
Yep.
And then she starts to put on makeup and she starts to, wear
earrings.
High heels and earrings and things. And every time she does it, like, Vimes notices, but, like, doesn't want to bring, he's just like, oh, what's wrong with your eyes? And she's like, oh,
it's just mascara.
And he's like, oh.
Right. Okay.
Carry on then.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
And so Cheery is developing this very close friendship with Angua, and Angua is sort of helping her. She's, like, giving her dresses and, like, makeup tips and all of this kind of stuff, and being supportive to her.
Which is funny because Cheery hates werewolves. Werewolves killed some of her family, so she fucking hates werewolves and basically, like, says some horrible things about werewolves. And Angua basically is, like, upset, but also is kind of like, yeah, honestly, fair.
Yeah.
We do kind of suck.
Angua has spent a lot of time doing her best to be as unwerewolf as possible. She's
a vegetarian.
She is a vegetarian, except for the times when she's not, and that's usually when she is in wolf form and has less control over herself. But she prides herself on always going around to where she had previously killed the chickens and shoving a couple of dollars onto the door.
Yeah.
And so she is very, like, it's one of those things where, like, she will turn into a wolf and will use the nose when she needs to, but she is genuinely, every time you're in her head, she is doing her best to repress her more lupine aspects, essentially.
Yeah, and there are times even where she's, like, at the slaughterhouse, she's like, I cannot turn into a werewolf here, because if I do, there are going to be consequences. Like, there are going to be problems. And
I don't know that I could control it, essentially.
Exactly. Which is a very interesting thing about that.
Yeah.
But, Cherry is... she's an alchemist. She's really good at her job. She's good at testing things. She knows about, all this different stuff. She also takes crime scene photography, which is a thing that we learn about, where they have just a camera that just has a tiny little imp in it that paints a picture of the thing that you're looking at.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's one of the ways they find out that it's a golem, because when the guy dies, he has the last image he saw when he was alive in his eyes, which is two
glowing red dots,
which is the eyes of a golem.
That little conversation between Cheery and the imp is very funny, because he keeps calling her sick.
Yeah,
he's like, you're really sick, mister.
Yeah, you're a real freak. It's really good. And then, of course, Vimes has his own pocket reminder. It's like like a 17 function pocket reminder thing, which it's just a little imp that lives inside.
Yeah, it's the disorganizer. It's deeply unhelpful. It actually cannot remember appointments for him.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where you have to talk computer at it.
Yeah.
Like, if you wanted to take a memo, you can't just start talking to it. You have to say memo first.
Yeah.
And also the disorganizer doesn't know what his name is because he never filled out his registration card.
Bingly bing bong.
Bingly bing bong. And Sybil Vimes keeps buying him these things despite the fact that he hates them and doesn't want to use them.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of people buying Vimes presents that he hates and doesn't want to use, in the very beginning, we find out that Veterinary, as a wedding present, had gotten Sam Vimes, a man who loves to walk around the city, a palanquin. So that a sedan chair, so that he can be carried around the city and he doesn't get to walk anymore.
Which he does not do.
Which he hates and he doesn't use. And at one point, there's a really funny bit where he goes out and he looks at one of the guys who's carrying it, and he's like, all right, jump in, I'm gonna drive myself today.
Yeah. Not only that, but at one point, he's got these really nice boots now because he's got money. He swaps them with somebody else who has shitty boots because he wants to feel the cobblestones under his feet.
And then we get a great chase scene.
Yeah.
There's a new golem in the city that is going crazy, and Vimes is walking home in the fog. This is a spring in Ankh-Morpork, and it is foggy as hell. It is, you cannot see 3 feet in front of you foggy.
Yeah.
And so he's walking home, and he's walking across, I believe, Misbegot Bridge, which has 7 hippos on it.
Yeah.
Something like that. But it turns out there's one more shape than there should be, and oh my god, it's a new golem, and it's chasing Vimes through the street, and he's running blindly through this fog and just knowing where he is by the cobblestones on his feet. And it's such a good chase scene. It's hard to write chase scenes in books well because the tension, essentially.
Yeah.
It's such a good chase scene.
It's really good. And the golems are a very important part of the story that we haven't really talked about so much yet. But basically, golems, if you don't know the concept of a golem, they are a clay person that is made, they're from Hebrew mythology. Basically, you put a chem in their head, which is words.
A little scroll of paper with words on it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a religious thing, and that gives them instructions, and that gives them life and all this kind of stuff. But everyone in the city is basically well, golems aren't really people; they're just automatons that we stick stuff in their head and they just do things, and so you don't really need to treat them well. You can have them do horrible, dirty jobs. You don't ever have to give them days off or rest or anything like that, except for holy days. They do apparently have holy days where they need to, go off and do things.
It is a repeated refrain in this book that golems do all of the really mucky jobs.
Yes, so they're they work in the slaughterhouse, and they work in they dig ditches, and they're in factories and things like that. This is sort of the inciting incident of the plot. They all kind of hate this.
Yeah.
They can't not be like this.
In as much as they can hate or love anything because they don't really have emotions like that. But they do chafe at the fact that they are essentially just tools.
Yeah.
And they are not free in any way that is meaningful.
And according to their chem, according to the thing in their head, they have to have a master.
Yeah.
So what they decide to do is they decide to create a new golem who is the king golem.
Yeah.
Which they name Meshuggah, which is, a Hebrew word, or maybe it's a Yiddish word. I don't remember exactly. It's also the name of a metal band, which when they mentioned it in the book, I was like, anyway, Meshuggah's pretty good. they put words in his head that are like, free everyone, treat them with respect, be good, all
Lead
that kind of
us,
stuff.
yeah.
And basically, it can't do all that stuff because it's impossible.
It was given too many words.
And so he goes crazy and starts killing people.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And so the other golems are basically like trying to fix the problem. They don't want Meshuggah to go around and kill people. They feel terrible about it. And in fact, some of them start to
destroy themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the central tenet of the book. Is a golem alive?
Yes.
Can it be alive? Is it basically a shovel that can walk, or can it make decisions for itself?
Yeah.
And initially, they kind of can't make decisions for themselves. The refrain that is often repeated is "Golem must have a master."
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of what drove the King Golem insane, is that he is supposed to be the king. He is supposed to be the highest voice of authority for his people, but also Golem must have a master. So both of those things competing in his head drove him insane, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Also, golems cannot speak.
They
literally do not have a voice. They have to speak by writing with a pencil on like a clay tablet and then show it to you.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that they can sort of tell you things.
Yes. So in the book, every time the golems are like communicating, they're just kind of like writing out on like a slate with chalk. And one of the things, once they start destroying themselves, is they're all like writing notes on their chalk, and it's saying stuff like sorrow, regret, clay of my clay, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in sort of a last almost insult, oftentimes also the slates that they were writing on, the only thing that they used to have a voice, are also being destroyed.
Yes.
Or taken away in some cases.
Yeah.
And so, the Watchmen sort of start to figure out that the golems are involved in this, and that they have something going on. At one point, Dorfel walks into one of the watch houses and admits to having killed people.
Dorfel is one of the golems.
Dorfel is one of the golems. Yeah, walks into one of the watch houses and admits to having killed Father Tubelchick and Mr. Hopkins. And Carrot is like, no, you didn't. First of all, you can't. And second of all, you didn't. And third of all, you can't. You're a golem. You can't kill people. You can't hurt anybody.
Yes, and as it turns out, all of the regular golems literally can't hurt a person.
Yes.
They do not have the ability to do that.
It is the laws of robotics applied to a golem, essentially.
More or less, yes. There's just a lot of the book that's about, is this a person? Is this not a person? And it's funny because the book starts out with everybody being like, well, they're definitely not people. Even Carrot, Carrot is one of those characters where he is always on the good and just and moral side.
Yeah.
Once he sort of gets his head around the topic. And, but in this book, there's a couple of times where he's basically not on the just side. But it's not because he doesn't mean well. It's just because he doesn't understand.
Yep.
He's on the wrong side about Cheery because he comes from dwarvish culture. He's a human, but he grew up with dwarves. So, well, you just don't do that. And then once he kind of understands,
you can almost see her knees.
Yeah. Once he understands, he's like, you know what? You're right. Things are different here. You should be able to do what you want. And the same with, he's like, golems aren't people. But over time, he kind of is like, you know what? No, he is. And in fact, he buys Dorfel and then gives Dorfel to himself.
He puts the receipt that he got for Dorfel inside Dorfel's head.
Yeah.
So now Dorfel has the chem that powers him and also his own receipt. So Dorfel is free.
Yes.
And Dorfel kind of shuts off. He blue screens of death for a hot second, where he just kind of stops and is like, what do I do? And then in a very great and funny sequence, he decides that he's going to go also free other people and everything else. And so Dorfel worked at a slaughterhouse. He worked at the butcher, and he goes and frees all of the animals that were meant for slaughter and causes sort of a stampede down Ankh-Morpork.
Yeah. And the animals, they're animals. They don't understand.
Yeah. What are they going to do?
What? And Dorfel's like, I don't get it. Why aren't they?
Yeah. Why didn't they leave? Why did they go back to their pen?
Mm-hmm. As it turns out, the King Golem was working in the candle factory.
Yeah.
And this candle factory is where they were making arsenic candles. So as the candles burn, it releases arsenic into the air, and that's what's poisoning Vetinari. He's
yes.
having the candles burn. and that's why it would affect him, because he would stay up really late at night reading or like writing papers, and he would breathe in the arsenic from the candles, and that was what was poisoning him. Yeah. And in the morning when the lights were on, he didn't need it, so he would start to feel better.
Also, so there were 2 other people who then also died. Old Mrs. Easy and her son, her very young son. Grandson, yeah. Who lived on Cockbill Street where Sam Vimes used to live.
Yeah.
The old Mrs. Easy's daughter worked in the palace, and as sort of perks, you sometimes get to take home stuff.
Yeah, like the candles that burnt most of the way down,
but not all the way. Yeah, and since I forget what her name is, but young Miss Easy, because she works in the palace and because she works in like the specific area, she gets to take the good candles home. And she does, and she gives them to her mother, who spent all of her life raising 9 children in a 2-bedroom house and only got money by sewing, essentially, used these candles with the good light and the good wax to sew all night long, and sat up with her grandson, who was a colicky baby. And they both died also from that arsenic poisoning. And speaking of Carrot being on the wrong side of things, when Vimes brings up that old Mrs. Easy and her grandson had died, Carrot's like, who? Carrot doesn't know who these people are, which is insane because Carrot knows everybody in the city. But it's one of those things of like, the people in Cockbill Street don't really associate in the same way that everybody who Carrot knows does.
And also, Carrot's not... Carrot knows everybody because they're out and about and stuff, but old Mrs. Easy just stays at home all day.
Home all day, sewing and trying to keep all of her family alive. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's very interesting because I think if you felt like Carrot was sort of perfect in the first 2 books a little bit, he's just like so good. This one breaks him down a little bit. He's still a great character. He's still a very good guy and tries to do the best, but he's like wrong a couple of times, frequently. But, he does the right thing in the end. He figures things out. And I think that's why I really like him in this book, is that he is wrong and has to accept that he is wrong and work on himself a little bit. Yeah. Which is, he's not just perfect.
Yes,
which is good.
Yes, agreed.
Once they figure out what's going on, they have a fight with the King Golem. Dorfel gets smashed up in this fight. And they're very sad, and they're like, oh no. So they take him to
a troll pottery place.
Yeah. And basically have him fix him and give him a voice.
Yep.
And so when Dorfel comes back, he can now speak, and he has his own mind. He can, do whatever he wants. And there's even a few times where he is like, someone tells him to do something, and he's just like, I could choose not to do this, but I will because
I respect you, and you're the one who's asking me to.
Yeah. He also is an atheist. He's the first ceramic atheist, and he wants to have debates with priests and people
and visit.
It's actually really funny that he and Visit become friends. God, what a great little like tie to that, where it's just like
Visit's so excited that someone actually read the pamphlets and wants to talk to him about it, even though like Dorfel inherently disagrees.
Yeah, Dorfel is like, I read the pamphlets and they're bad, but bring me more, please. And Visit's like, what?
You read all of them? Are you sure?
Which I love that. That's really great. They figure out what's going on with Vetinari. And then, of course, as is tradition for this series, there's a great scene at the end, this time with Vimes and Vetinari talking to each other.
Yeah.
And Vetinari, we find out sort of most of the way through the book that Vetinari already had it figured out.
Oh, yeah.
There's even a scene after Vimes leaves where he goes, oh, good. He thinks to himself, he's like, oh, good. Vimes seems to be on the case now. If he had been wrong for any longer, I would have had to give him hints.
Yep.
And so you always get this idea that Vetinari's fucking smug little bastard. He always knows what's going on. But he has a great conversation with Vimes about everything going on, and Vetinari's just like, everyone in the city wants me to fire you, so I'm afraid I'll have to give you a raise. And Vimes leaves, and Vetinari has a fun little what's his assistant's name? Drumknot. Yeah, he has a fun little conversation with Drumknot after that, where Drumknot's like, sir, I would have to imagine that if Vimes didn't exist, you would have to invent him. And Vetinari sees him and he's just like, Drumknot, I believe I did.
Yeah. So it kind of continues the theme of like the words in people's heads. So the golems have the words in their head. They've got their own chem. But also Sam puts words in Carrot's head, and that's something that Angua remarks on quite a lot, and is something that continues through the books. But also, Vetinari puts words in Sam's head.
But you know what? Carrot also puts words in Vime's head.
True.
Vimes talks, a lot about the things that Carrot says that, happen. So, yeah, everyone's putting, words into each other's heads.
Yep.
That, changes who they are, which is such a great theme. There's, a lot of the... Terry Pratchett basically saying, people being treated as things is the root of all evil.
Yes.
And, having to be a voice for the voiceless. And golems are literally people who are being treated as things and who are literally voiceless. There's just all these great themes in the book. It's so good.
There's at the end when Vimes is talking to Dorfel, he's like, what are you gonna do? And he's like, do you want to be a copper? I'll give you a job. And Dorfel's like, yes, and you will pay me more because I don't ever have to rest and I will work 24/7. And he's like, what are you gonna do with all that money? And he's like, I will save up and I will buy another golem, and together we will work and save and buy another golem, and together the three of us will work and save and buy another golem. And it's like Vimes thinks it's gonna be like the quietest, most fiscally responsible revolution in history.
Yeah, exactly. Which I love that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, because it's one of those things like Dorfel proved that you can't just free the golems. He did that. He smashed up some other golems stuff, and they just went back to work because they don't have it. They have no concept of what freedom means. There's a bit where citizens who have cornered Dorfel and they're trying to pound it, destroy him essentially, and he's writing on his slate I'm worth this much money, and they're like, what do you mean you're talking about money at a time like this? And Carrot says something like, well, when all you have is a price, that's the only thing that you can offer, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have anything else.
Welcome to the part of the podcast where Donovan's going to go on a little bit of a political rant here.
Go for it.
So this is a thing in a lot of leftist theory, is the concept of parallel power structures, where one of the reasons why revolution, just plain revolution, smash the state, bring everything down doesn't work. Once you destroy the state and you smash the hierarchy, a new hierarchy will just take its place.
Yeah.
That is how power works. And so what you have to do is you have to create a new kind of thing, and then so when you smash the old thing, you then have this new thing to work off of.
Yeah.
And you sort of have to create that thing first, and you have to create that thing, you have to make it really well established. This is a problem with leftist discourse in the US right now in general, is that there's a lot of corrupt and broken and all this kind of shit, and it should be destroyed and don't take part in it. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine, you can believe that, but how are you setting up that parallel power structure so that when all that stuff gets destroyed and taken down and goes away, if it ever does, when that happens, you can pivot to this new thing.
Yeah, people still need to be able to eat. When you destroy the system, yes. How are you putting food on the table?
And so Dorfel in this book, it's great because basically he's just well, yeah, this is inherently unfair, and so the way that I'm going to fix it is by creating my own way of fixing it. I'm going to, set up this structure. I don't know how he would describe it. Maybe he starts a charity or something that
we do see in Going Postal in the first Moist von Lipwig book that the golems essentially, together with a woman whose name I don't remember, I only remember her nickname, it's Spike, she creates a sort of a it's almost like a nonprofit, an NGO, and she is sort of the human face of all of this sort of thing, where she sort of arranges payments for golems. She helps find them. She helps golems buy other golems, and she helps the golems find jobs and sort of helps manage their money so that they can buy more golems and free more golems.
And again, traditionally in leftist politics, those kinds of groups, they're workers' collectives, they're unions. Those are those things. Traditionally, that's what you would have as at least some of the beginnings of some of those things. But unions have also, a lot of them, unfortunately, have also been co-opted by dumb bullshit. Look, I was a Teamster, and the Teamster union is one of the shittier unions when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Not shittiest, because there are policeman unions, but
there are way worse. And also, I was very proud to be a member of the union for the time that I was, and there are absolutely benefits to even that one. It's the largest union in the country for a reason. you get great benefits and all that kind of stuff. But like politically, it was kind of a mess. It's a lot of conservative truck drivers. Like, it's those people are not going to be on your side when the revolution comes. This is the stuff that pops into my head a lot. I am somebody who considers myself a lefty, but I do not consider myself a revolutionary lefty for a lot of these kinds of reasons. Mm-hmm. A lot of these sorts of things are things that I don't think are thought about enough.
Agreed.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
And I'm sure somebody out there might listen to this and go like, oh, Donovan, well, you didn't read Lenin when he said this or Mao when he said, and I'm just going to be like, I don't care. Like, that's not important. Like, I get it. Yes, reading theory is good. All that, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, ultimately, how is that going to put bread on people's tables?
Exactly.
Because that's mostly what people actually care about.
Yeah.
Which is another sort of theme of this book, is that it's better to have veterinary in power than somebody else, because he's going to make sure that tomorrow is mostly like today.
Yeah.
That it's not going to be that different, and that the city is going to continue to work.
Yeah. I very much enjoyed, speaking of history and politics, I very much enjoyed the story about Stoneface Vimes getting the king, arresting him, and then trying to have a judge try him, but nobody would. That kind of parallels Charles I.
Yes.
Basically, they captured Charles I because he was a tyrant and a horrible person, but they couldn't actually do anything because the law basically didn't allow for a king to be tried for a crime.
Yeah.
So they basically had to find a radical weirdo judge to like oversee their basically fake trial for him. Mm-hmm. But that's just because the law that existed at the time didn't allow for kings to do crimes, even though any human being can understand that, yeah, of course a king can do crime.
Yeah.
Of course a king who like does horrible shit is bad and should be taken care of.
Yeah.
But the law that the king made said that can't happen. It's just like, hey.
Okay, sorry, hang on. What sort of circular logic is this?
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's all made up bullshit, and we all do it because we all kind of agree to it.
Yeah.
This is why I'm trying to get into electrical engineering, because knowing political science, all it does is just make you sad. All it does. Like, how many, like, problems in society have very simple fixes that political scientists have come up with?
Yeah, you can just unplug the orphan crushing machine.
Yeah, you can just unplug the orphan crushing machine. You can also take the orphan crushing machine and, like, just plug a few wires in differently, and now it's the fascist crushing machine.
Yeah.
But, it's always been an orphan crushing machine, and so we can't change it.
Yeah.
A piece of paper says it has to be orphan crushing, and, sorry, that's just what the piece of paper says.
If we unplug the orphan crushing machine, how are we going to crush these orphans?
Yeah, exactly. It is a burden, and I know you agree with this. Yeah. It is a burden to be able to imagine a better world.
Yeah.
And I have to wonder, did Terry Pratchett feel this? He had to have.
I believe that he did. Yeah. I mean, Terry Pratchett also is very much a student of history, perhaps not as much as George R. R. Martin, but like in a similar sort of way.
Oh,
there are absolutely parts of there is parts of it that absolutely was based on King Charles I and all of that kind of stuff, and I think that in all things Terry Pratchett is an optimist. I think that he wrote these books in a way to sort of create the world that he wanted. Create the sort of world that, like, it wasn't perfect, because I don't think that he believed in perfectness in that sort of way, but it was a world where people did take care of each other and did care for each other and did do their best to ensure that we all made it, more or less.
I completely agree. And I'm only going to mention this just because you mentioned George R. R. Martin. This book came out the same year as the first Game of Thrones book.
Oh, the very first one?
In fact, they came out about 2 months apart.
Yeah.
So, like, it is... George R. R. Martin and Terry Pratchett were very similar in age and were contemporaries. It's just sad that Pratchett isn't around anymore and George R. R. Martin doesn't write any fucking books anymore. Motherfucker. Gonna fucking kick his ass. God damn it. I have a lot of very complex feelings about Gurm.
Yeah.
And Terry Pratchett, you know, for better or for worse, I don't have complex feelings about him. He's not around anymore. I can love him uncritically.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he was, by all counts, pretty great.
A pretty great dude.
Yeah. So, you know.
Who wanted the best for people and believed in his heart that you could be a better version of yourself. And God damn it, did he make me a better version of myself.
If he had any hand in molding you into the person you are today, then he deserves all the praise in the world.
Yeah.
Just a few other tiny little tidbits from the book that I just want to bring up.
Yeah.
I loved the bit in the undead bar.
Oh my God, beers, yeah.
Yeah, they go to the undead bar, which is great. We meet Boogeyman, and the Boogeyman, the way that he is defeated is by throwing a blanket over him. So
because when you are a kid and you're going to sleep and you're afraid of the Boogeyman, you hide underneath the blanket, and the blanket actually protects you from the Boogeyman. So if you throw a blanket over a Boogeyman, it kind of makes them not sure if they're alive anymore or not.
Yeah, they have like an existential crisis. Very, very funny. I really enjoyed the bit where Colon, he gets stuck in the waterways of
Oh my God, we didn't even talk about Wee Mad Arthur.
I know, I was just about to say we didn't talk at all about Wee Mad Arthur. Oh my
Wee Mad
God.
Arthur. Okay, Wee Mad Arthur is a gnome. He is a very small little pixie kind of guy. He is 6 inches tall. He lives in Ankh-Morpork, and he's an exterminator. He fights rats on their terms.
Yes.
There's a really great bit where he's talking about like they're talking about the fact that like there's a scale when it comes to pay where like if you pay Wee Mad Arthur $1, he can use that $1 to buy a loaf of bread, and like that loaf of bread for you and me might have kept us fed for like a day, but there's a week worth of food for Wee Mad Arthur, and also you can hollow it out to make a bedroom.
Yeah. So he doesn't need as much money, which means the Rat Catchers Guild hates him, but they can't do anything about him because
he will nut them. He will jump up, run up them, and then grab onto their eyelids and bang his head into their forehead until they're dazed.
And Wee Mad Arthur is like, he's like a superhero. He's like really strong.
Yes.
Because of how small, he's like Ant-Man or something.
Yes.
You know? So, you know, when he hits you, it feels like this, you know, all that force is like concentrated into one tiny little place, and it fucking hurts.
Yes.
So yeah, Wee Mad Arthur helps Colin escape through the Ankh River, which they describe as being like almost a solid.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it's super gross, but it's a very funny bit.
By the time it is wound down through all of the planes and picked up all sorts of silt and stuff on the way, it's basically a non-Newtonian substance. Like, it's mostly actually just mud.
Yeah. One of the very funniest scenes in the whole book also is when Nobbs goes to the fancy party where he is being sort of introduced to high society as the Earl of Ankh. He's basically like the worst guy ever. And they all like they're trying to meet him halfway, and it's just like
it's basically a whole room of like nobles looking at him in like quiet horrified fascination.
Yeah. And he at one point, you know, they goes to the buffet, and he's just like, oh, quail eggs, look how many I can fit in my mouth. And he just sticks like 6 of them in the mouth. And then later on he's just like, quails can't be good birds, their eggs are so small. It's just really funny. At one point he's drinking brandy, and he's just like, oh, this brandy's like really, really good, and someone pours him more. He's like, no, fill the cup up, and everyone's like, no, you enjoy the
savor the bouquet.
You enjoy the bouquet. You sniff it and you sip on it, and he's just like, nah, pour it, fill it up.
Yeah. Sniff it, no thanks, I'll drink it.
Yeah.
This group of people is kind of proposing this idea to Navi that he should be the new leader of Ankh-Morpork after the partition dies. And his whole thing is about that is, A, you never volunteer for anything, but also B, Vimes will go spare.
Yeah, Vimes will go spare. Vimes will be upset at me, and they're all like, but you'll be king, you don't have to worry about him. And he's like, but he'll be mad at me.
You'll be in charge of him, you can tell him what to do. I can't do that, Vimes will go spare.
Yeah, he'll be mad at me. It's just really funny. And then he jumps out a window, which is great. And then, you know, he has that thought, as you just said, where he's just like, look, I've been around long enough to know you never volunteer for anything. No matter how good it sounds, you never volunteer. If you were in the military and they said, we want a man to volunteer to have sex and drink alcohol, you take a step backwards because you know there's going to be a catch.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that his thought process is so devolved that he's just like, no, absolutely not. And it turns out that he's probably not actually the Earl of Ankh.
No. One of the things was like, he had some sort of ring or something, but also like all of his family have been stealing stuff for generations anyway. So like you could find enough jewelry on his person to also prove that he's like, the Duchess of Quirm or like the Seraph of Klachistan or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. He's got everything.
Yeah.
So. Just so many great little scenes in this book. So many fun lines and jokes. God. It's really good. Like I said, it's my favorite so far, and I loved the first two. I really did, and I'm excited to get to the next one.
This is when I go back and reread Night Watch books. I've read Thud. It's like probably a dozen or so times in my life, but this is also one of the ones that I go back for regularly.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. It also seems like the first one where like. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but like in the first book, Vimes is captain, and second book he's captain, and he's also like kind of leaving, and Carrot becomes corporal and all that kind of stuff. This is the one where it's Commander Vimes and Captain Carrot, and like I imagine they're probably at that level for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's sort of like you've gotten to the steady state a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts?
No, not really. Read this book. It's really good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Not to get all preachy, but read the book and, think about
what it means to be human.
And, the people out there who are dehumanized and why people do that and what sinister, selfish, shitty purposes they have for thinking that way.
Yeah.
So, hey. Anyway, I've been Donovan.
I've been Hannah.
And,
you should be like Dorful. Do good because you choose to do good.
Yeah. And be your own master.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all. Toodaloo. Thanks for listening. You can find us at mythingyourthing.com or at mythingyourthingpod on social media. Thanks to RK Maroon for letting us use their song Macaroni Art from the EP You Can't Eat Horses. You can get it at rkmaroon.bandcamp.com. If you have a thing you think we should talk about, email us at mythingyourthingpod@gmail.com, and maybe that could be our thing.